So hello, and hello everyone, and welcome to this afternoon session on better regulation for a data-driven single market. My name is Anders Bumholdt. Most days I'm a civil servant working at the Danish Business Authority, part of the Danish Ministry for Business, Industry and Financial Affairs, where I work on the sort of cross-section between digitization and sustainability. But today I have the immense joy and honor to host this discussion, also on the same manners. You know, how can digitization and better data sharing, not least on sustainability, help delivering burden reductions for companies, not least SMEs, which is what Europe so desperately needs these days. It has probably not escaped anyone's attention that the European Commission, the member states, and the European Parliament is very occupied these days with simplifying a range of different EU legislations, not least in sustainability, but virtually the entire EU acquis is under scrutiny. And while regulatory simplification is key to reduce the burdens, we also need to focus on how we can keep delivering on the intended objectives on the regulation, and sort of balance that towards increasing the competitiveness of European businesses and SMEs. So a central question for today's session is, how do we make it easier for companies to meet the reporting requirements, deal with their daily business beyond simplification? How do we make full use of digitization as a tool to deliver burden reduction, which in a way that can also drive sustainability purposes, sustainability and productivity and growth in Europe? These have been recurring questions during the Danish presidency. So it's been asked and discussed at several occasions, and it's also the topic for today. And to kick off today's discussions, and to go more into depth with what data-driven single market could look like, what we need to do to get going, we've invited Andreas Hauptmann over here to kick the presentation off. Andreas is the Deputy Director General of National and Business and International Business Conditions at the Danish Business Authority. And in his portfolio, a lot of EU policy resides, single market issues, simplification, industrial policy, defense industry, quantum, foreign investment screening, and so on. So it's not exactly topics that lack attention at the moment. Today, Andreas is going to tell us a little bit about why digitization is so important for companies and to SMEs to achieve burden reduction, and why Denmark has made automation of business reporting an important priority during its presidency. What kind of burden reduction potentials are we talking about, and what can we actually do about it? So please welcome Andreas Hauptmann. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. Our mission in the Danish Business Authority is to make it simple and attractive to run a business in Denmark. That sounds quite simple, but it relies heavily on the conditions in Denmark, but it relies even more heavily on the conditions throughout Europe and having a single market that actually works. A central aspect, as you probably have heard this morning, and for those of you that was also there yesterday evening, is to bring down the burdens of business right now. It's a huge political focus in Denmark as well as at a European level. The good thing is we have part of the recipe, we think, in what I'm about to tell you in a few moments. That is the power in digitizing, standardizing, and automating businesses' administrative processes. It's not a quick fix. It takes time and requires committed collaboration between the European Commission, us in the member states, and in the private sector. But the good news is we have many building blocks, and we actually think it's not that difficult to go down this road. So, to start off, to reduce the burdens in Europe and make Europe faster and simpler, we need two crucial steps. The first step I will not use a lot of energy on today. We need to simplify and streamline EU regulation. The omnibuses is a very good example of that. And I think the Commission is moving very, very fast in this regard, even though not all businesses is feeling it on the ground yet. But an equally important next step is to digitize, standardize, and automate businesses' administrative processes and reporting requirements afterwards. I think the single market strategy from the Commission earlier this year charts out the initiatives to enhance EU's competitiveness in the coming years. And a very clear signal in this strategy is that the EU needs a paradigm shift from a document-based to a data-driven single market. We very much agree from the Danish presidency, and today I will try to be a little more concrete. What do we think that could mean in practice? While simplification is a must, I think first and foremost it's crucial to remember that there's no need to digitize what could be simplified. So we need to simplify first and then digitize afterwards. But the burdens, actually, when we started looking at all the burdens in detail from the Danish Business Authority side, we started looking at the reporting from businesses to government. But we quite quickly found out that's not where the burdens actually are. The burdens is actually in the business-to-business transactions that leading up to the reporting to government. 80 to 90% of the burden is coming in that case. As an example, we looked at the CSRD proposal. The burdens in the CSRD comes from the gathering of relevant information, climate emission factors, climate data across value chains. It comes from processing and analyzing all this information, everything bought and sold within the company, and to calculate the climate emissions from all these transactions. And then it is to verify all this information and share it in a comparable way to other businesses, investors, or public authorities. If you are an SME, you will probably need to do this a couple of hundred times a year. If you are a large company, it will be a couple of thousand times a year. Data sent back and forth in everything from mails, Excel sheets to PDFs. Little insight to the calculation methods behind the data, and using very different systems incorporating all this data together. This becomes a very manual and burdensome process and creates a lot of burdens. We think there's much potential in actually starting with the company itself and taking that as a starting point for how we move forward. If we're looking in more detail, where do the burdens come from? It starts with having non-digital reporting requirements. This creates uncertainty on how businesses should gather and share relevant information for reporting, and without the data necessarily meeting other essential business needs. So this is reporting for reporting's sake, and that is never a good starting point for a dialogue with the companies. And the uncertainty in the value chain gets even multiplied exactly when you use it across the value chain. You don't request and give the same information at the different layers within the value chains. Secondly, we have a lack of access to trustworthy data. That makes it difficult and costly for businesses to verify and compare this data. This is, for example, evident within climate reporting as well. There is a lack of authoritative climate emission factors that makes it difficult for companies to actually trust and compare climate calculations. Third, there's a lack of standardized data and data formats that makes it difficult for businesses to automate data sharing between companies. Instead, they share them in manual manners with a significant cost for processing. Fourth, the businesses lack IT systems to handle their core business data. Only 40% of EU businesses today has an enterprise resource planning system to handle their central business documents and reporting. Fifth, companies rely on private and fragmented national infrastructures to share business data, often characterized by vendor login due to proprietary networks and platforms. this leads also to significant costs. If we translate all this, these burdens and these barriers, only in the area of financial reporting, our rough estimation shows that we have burdens for more than 200 billion euros in cost. This is in financial reporting alone. Imagine if we could take quite a big part of that money and put it to better use. Luckily, we believe we are not starting from scratch. We have come actually a long way already. We have worked with a lot of different building blocks across the EU to introduce and promote e-invoicing, support business data flows, and increase digitization of SMEs. The single market strategy sets the direction for the years to come, and we believe that we have almost all the building blocks there already. We need a continuous effort to make the building blocks work together and streamline them even further. So, we are proposing an action plan that we hope will get adopted in a little more than a month at the Competitiveness Council in December. We have suggested a 5-step action plan: digital-ready legislation, making sure that reporting requirements follow clearly standardized and digital methodologies; easy access to trustworthy and qualified public data needed for business reporting, again, for example, a climate emission factor database; and then we need harmonized and standardized data formats, making sure that data is understandable and comparable, and that we can use and reuse all this data, both business to business and business to government. I think a very important first step here is to scale up the use of e-invoicing and efficiently standardize and all the financial and transactional data that's already there. This leads to the 4th step, setting technical minimum requirements to IT system providers handling business data. And I think this is a very crucial area, actually, because I think what we need to imagine, all this is not new regulation that we should put on SMEs. Instead, we should make minimum requirements so we make the market of system providers work for all the SMEs throughout Europe. Lastly, we must establish an open and common business data exchange infrastructure throughout Europe. So, a case of automated reporting, how does that look like? By following the 5 key steps, we put the company's core IT system as the center of attention. Everything evolves around that. We need to have data going into that system and out of that system that creates value both for the businesses themselves and then also for the governments that need the reports and for the value chains. Digital-ready legislation, a clear legal framework, provides the opportunity to automate reporting to government and other end users alike. And by giving access to open and transparent data, that could be in the form of public databases or in European data spaces, for example. Companies can trust and verify data across value chains. And by following standardized and machine-readable data formats, companies' IT systems can interact directly with another. And by mandating technical minimum requirements to IT solution providers, businesses' digital systems will be interoperable, transparent, and compliant. And last, by using and connecting the already existing EU building blocks, such as e-delivery and the widely used Open Pebble network for exchange of business data. We have looked at the perspectives of using e-invoicing and digital bookkeeping in Denmark. We have made quite a bit of analysis on this, and it shows that alone in this area, all companies in Denmark can save 82 hours of work annually due to automation of business processes and reporting. This stems only from handling the millions of transactions needed for annual bookkeeping. If we put this together, it amounts to something like 1.2 billion euros in cost savings annually in Denmark alone. In comparison, the ERP systems needed in all the businesses in order to do this cost 14 million euros across all Danish companies together. The benefits outweighs the cost by a huge degree. And if we take these calculations and transfer them to a EU level, there is a cost reduction potential of more than 87 billion annually. Then we can speak about competitiveness in the Draghi report sense. And also keeping in mind that this is not just money on paper. This is actually time spent on bookkeeping, late hours at night in all the businesses across Europe. They will both get validated data within their system much, much quicker. And they will also, I think, gain the opportunity for business insights once all this data in their systems is standardized and machine readable. I think this will also help the digital transitions of many SMEs throughout Europe. So, in the end, I think we need to keep focus on where is the burdens today. The burdens is in all the business-to-business transactions leading up to the reporting to government. So that's where we need to focus if we want to fix this problem. I think we need to be aware that we can reduce the burdens for companies in legislation to a large degree, but there will be regulation left. We don't have a single market functioning if we don't have common rules. The burdens in all these common rules stems from data. We need a way to make handling of data between businesses easier if we want to solve the competitiveness issue around Europe. We believe the path to digitization, standardization, and in the end automation is not that far off. We can do it in a lot of areas already in Denmark. We believe the potential are huge across Europe. And this is not an enormous IT development exercise. This is actually using what's already there, but in a structured and systematic manner in the years to come. And then get the market for system providers to the companies work for us. Let them compete on making the best business systems across Europe that you can actually tap quite easily into if you are an SME. We hope the action plan will see light in a month or so. And then we hope very much that we can see a continued effort and well-coordinated collaboration across Europe in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andreas, for an insightful presentation. I can't help think that it's interesting how we as policymakers have spent, decades on thinking about simplification and reducing overlapping burdens. Yet this enormous potential somehow evaded us until now. But I guess SMEs don't care as long as burdens are reduced. They don't really care where they stem from. Let's get our discussion going. I'm very happy to be able to present today our 3 additional panelists who will discuss the situation, what to do, how they work already today, and what road they see forward on this issue. To my immediate right, we have Kuba Bodatinski. You are the Director for Compliance and Responsible Business Conduct in the DG GROW, the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs at the European Commission. Welcome, Jaco.
Thank you.
You are, among other things, responsible for enhancing the business environment by promoting advanced digitization, responsible business practices, sustainable business practices, and ensuring fair competition. Also, we have Linda Schollenberg. Linda Schollenberg is Deputy Head of Division at the Department for SME Policy at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. You've been working a lot with sustainability reporting in recent years, and currently you are the lead of a project funded by the ministry that provides company with a digital tool to help them comply with the CSRD requirements and report based on the voluntary VSME standard, also called the German Sustainability Code. Welcome to you also, Linda.
Thank you.
Then we have Victor Peterson. Victor has a background in the Danish software startup scene, so he's a real company. Happy to have one of those also on our panel. You're currently product manager at Visma Economic, which is one of the largest ERP systems providers, bookkeeping systems providers in the Nordic, and you have a firm grip of the Danish market also. You work with digital bookkeeping platforms for SMEs, but also, so you focus on e-documents, and lately you've also been focusing on the green accounting. So the market potentials in the sustainability area is also something you've eyed, and also quote to cash functionality, which is essentially also helping companies speed up the process from order to cash in the coffin, so to speak. Before we kick off the discussion, I just want to mention to you that if you have questions as we go along, just please raise your hand, and I'm sure someone will come rushing in with a microphone. Okay, I would like to ask you first, Linda. Andreas talked about the burden reductions stemming a lot from the transactions between businesses. And in the area of sustainability reporting, is this also something that you've noted in your work with German SMEs? Is that what you hear from SMEs?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is very much what we also experience in Germany. So I can totally confirm this notion that requests from business to business are what actually cause the burden mostly for SMEs. We have seen this, for example, with the German supply chain law that entered into force in 2023. We've seen it with companies preparing for CSRD reporting, and we see it with ESG data requests from the financial markets, which all hit the SMEs, and the SMEs on the other side, or on the other hand, are not well prepared so far for gathering the requested data, for understanding even what exactly they need to deliver. And we also see that, or hear that there is a very huge field of different requests coming to the companies, which are not very streamlined. I think the VSME, the voluntary reporting standard, will help in some way in this respect. But still, there's really a huge tangible burden on the side of the SMEs. And also, I think it's fair to say that the smaller the company, the bigger the burden is, and the less prepared the companies are. So far, we have not seen an uptake of digital tools that would match the development of data requests, on the other hand. And I think this is one of the main reasons why the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy has decided to fund a project to provide companies with a digital tool to help them implementing the CSRD and VSME requests. And this tool, as you said correctly, is the German Sustainability Code, Deutscher Nachhaltigkeitskodex, DNK, as we like to abbreviate it. And this tool will be, or is, free of charge for the companies. It's a modular tool. We have a first module for the bigger companies for CSRD reporting based on the ESRS Set 1. This module has been online since the beginning of the year. And we also have, I think this is more interesting for SMEs, 2 modules for voluntary reporting based on the VSME. They have gone online with a beta version and a test phase in the beginning of September. And we have the official go live of the early access version in the end of November. So one module is the regular VSME module, already helping companies in a step-by-step procedure, making the data requests accessible and present the data requests in a comprehensible language, and also offering a extended help desk structure to support the companies even more. And for the even smaller companies, there is the so-called Future Compass Craft Skills, Zukunftskompass Handwerk, which is developed by the Central Agency for for continuing vocational education and training in the skilled crafts. And this makes it even more accessible, so to speak. It uses multiple choice questions in the data collection procedure, and also offers some calculation examples and small tools included. And there's also the option of just entering your address, your postal code, and then it's automatically indicated whether you do business in a area with high water stress or with areas sensitive to biodiversity issues. And later on in the reporting process, to put the final report together, there's AI used to put the final text together. So all in all, I think with those modules going live, we are very excited to see the end of November coming, and we really expect this to contribute a lot to burden reduction in the area of sustainability reporting, gathering data, and also sharing it with your business partners.
Interesting, yeah. So you adopt, put a digital layer on top of the reporting standards, so to speak, to allow companies to better understand them and actually deliver on what's been asked in the standards. Yeah, thank you.
That's correct. Thanks.
And to you, Victor, being a digital company working perhaps the closest of us here today with companies, the picture painted by Andreas on the burden reduction, sort of on the burdens experienced by companies and the digital readiness, so to speak. How do you see that as in your daily business?
I think we can definitely see a lot of what was described. Might just be because we're Nordic focused, but we actually experience high ambitions, but low ability to execute for a lot of SMEs, where they sort of expect us to explain to them what the standards are, how to do this, preferably automate it. But we, of course, don't have super clear standards in a lot of these areas. And that's what we look to policymakers to provide that. And especially now with, there's so much talk about AI, they sort of, I think the threshold for accepting new manual processes is even lower today. So they would probably expect us to automate or ideally lift this burden for them as much as possible. And for us, in order to do that, we need structured data, which was basically described as one of the key enablers, which I very much agree with on behalf of ISMA, that's usually the bottleneck. And that's where we see these standards providing the sort of throughput for that.
Yeah. Okay, so when you talk about standards,
yes,
you're not talking about the reporting standards, which are, well, they're in place. They're also being adjusted as we speak. You're talking about technical digital standards.
I think we would probably mention both, and they go sort of hand in hand, because at some point it needs to be translated into action. And that's where we saw with the Danish Bookkeeping Act a couple of years ago. That's a good example where a lot of that really advanced digitalization very quickly, but some areas of it were a bit fuzzy on implementation details. And there, Visma actually facilitated a discussion with the Danish accounting industry to together decide on informal standards for this. An example could be that there was a stipulation in the Danish Bookkeeping Act that bookkeeping should be done continuously. It should be up to date. And then it's up to the market to define what does that mean. And then in unison with the accounting firms, we decided that means 1 month, period. And then that's actionable for us. And that also means we can build software to lift the burden for the end user.
Okay. So you kind of decide on, you find a standard in the industry and perhaps even with the authorities to an agreed sort of service layer or service level, so to speak.
Exactly. And I think that's especially the case because we specifically target SMEs.
Yeah.
These are businesses that have everything else to do but this. And so they're not looking to define the workflows or standards themselves. They're looking for us to provide that.
Yeah. Just wanted to return to you, Linda, because the tool allows you to aggregate and display a reporting standard or a report based on the standards from the CSRD and, for instance, the VSME. And then you might, as an SME, have a bank who wants to see your report. Do you work with sort of private actors such as, banks or IT systems in order to bridge that gap until the user of the information?
Yeah, actually we do, especially with regard to the financial sector. We are working currently on an interface to make a direct transfer of the data that you entered for the VSME reporting to the banks that you are doing business with possible. I think this is a very crucial step in actually reducing the burden that you have from getting different requests for data. And we expect this interface to be up and working in the second half of 2026. And I think this is also an area of action for the ministry. I think we need to contribute to make or to raise awareness of the VSME standard and also make sure that there is market acceptance. And in order to get to this point, we do have regular dialogues with trade associations from both the real economy and the financial sector. And I think our goal should be and is to get some commitment from that side that there is acceptance for the VSME as a standard, also for ESG data requests from banks that need data for portfolio analysis and Also when giving out loans or for access to finance is a very important field for SMEs where this should really be helpful, we think. And also the tool was developed in close collaboration with different stakeholders. There were stakeholder workshops all along at several instances. So we really try to pay attention and listen to the SME's perspective in the development of the tool and in how it is set up, and also what steps should be taken next. I mean, this interface to make transactions with the banks is just the first step. I think we need to also look further later. And if we get to the point where we can use information from e-invoicing, that would be really a great next step. I think we are not quite there yet because uptake of e-invoicing is not that fast, and we actually looked at the option of scanning PDF invoices to include that data, but it's just too prone to errors. So the effort that you need to make to check whether all the information gathered by this procedure is correct, it doesn't save you much time in the end, or not any. So yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunities for future steps, and I think it is important to have the companies taken into account in this whole setup.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think the scanning of PDFs, we've heard that before, and it's we've also noted there's a lot of solutions out there in the private market who use that. Also seems like kind of what is possible yet or now with the current uptake of e-invoicing. Also sounds like there's opportunity for collaboration across the table with the ERP systems on how to streamline that data coming from the bookkeeping systems and into like a specialized platform such as yours. That brings me naturally to you, Kuba. You are in charge of basically policy on e-invoicing in the European Union, but also on other areas. You launched the single market strategy in May this year, and we were particularly fun to see a nice chapter on the digital part. You're presenting the ambition of a paradigm shift, coming from a paper-based current regime to a more data-based or data-driven single market. I mean, you've worked in the Commission and also at the member states level. We've been working with business to government reporting for many years and how to streamline that data sharing. But I'd like to turn the attention more to the business to business data sharing or the business to business instruments in that strategy. There are a couple. Which ones would you highlight in the strategy as key to this?
Okay. Anders, thanks a lot for the question, and I hope you will be kind with me. You allow me still to I'm not going to escape from your question, but just few. I would still like to make few more general comments. First of all, I mean, it's from my side a real appreciation for your drive, for your initiative to push this agenda, and I must say, I know your kind of drive from the past. You know, for many years I was in charge of cybersecurity policy, and one of the things that we were really very inspired and was extremely helpful, you know, this nightmare for companies having to report all sorts of incidents, you know, and you were the ones who basically came up with a very simple thing, you know, one reporting channel for different types of incidents, you know. That was for us a kind of a gold standard that we try to push. That was quite modest if you compare to again, I was almost, Andreas, jealous of your presentation because, you know, yeah, it is sophisticated, it's for the nerds, but it really well captures the dynamic.
Did you call me a nerd?
No. I'm calling myself a nerd, so I was able to grasp the fact is that we tend to indeed to present things through the prism of specific solutions, and you try really to look in a very comprehensive way through the business cycle, even though, and this is reflected indeed in Anders' question, even if your focus is on business to business. So let me again just say that we very much appreciate that drive from your side. I was in February in here discussing the upcoming single market strategy. We definitely have been very much looking forward indeed to your ideas and your push. So I will maybe come back later to the action plan, but for us it's extremely important that we see basically, because anyway, single market strategy is still a Commission strategy, so I think indeed the fact that that you kind of push for the ownership to be really fully taken by the Council is extremely important for us. And then we go to the fundamental issue, which is indeed digitalization is not about digitalizing the mess. It's basically an opportunity to rethink almost from scratch the things that we do, and that's what you said. It's about simplification, but well, it is simplification, but of course it's about many other things. It's about making things rational, making things fit for purpose, and this is where the intelligent and smart digitalization should come in. In this, so again, not to discuss, I would like to say a few more things, but okay, I will go to your question. So, it is basically present in many different, let's say, projects or initiatives, but I think digital product passport is an interesting kind of case in point. Started sort of in a modest way, almost as an afterthought. At least this is my impression from the distance, because I haven't been involved in eco-design. That it would be useful for sustainability issues. But as we see along the way, it has many users versus consumers versus authorities as a kind of a very useful tool for compliance. But indeed, business to business, it's ultimately about untapping the opportunities of circular economy. It might not be for every single, let's say, company that would have to have digital product passport, but indeed the data that would be there about supply chain, about the origin of the product, about opportunities for recycling. I mean, this is far from reporting. This is about major business opportunities, and I think this is indeed a useful push from your side, that we are not completely, let's say, focusing 90% of our attention on this kind of business to government dimension, which again is super important, and it's also our, let's say, responsibility to get it right. So I think DPP would be a useful case in point. There would be, of course, many other. Let me maybe just, because I don't want to go for too long, but single digital gateway. It is something that is kind of around. I realize that for marketing purposes, neither single digital gateway nor once only technical system is a very appealing, title. It always takes time to explain to policymakers what's behind. I mean, it's good for the nerds, but not maybe for the broad public. But I think the idea behind it is quite fundamental. Let's take first this kind of a more lower level of the, SDG as such, the information about cross-border procedures for citizens and businesses. But this, let's say, higher level, the Annex 2, which is about procedures that should be basically online, fully accessible, implementing the once-only principle. And I would say this is, I think, an example that we are at a stage where we build basically technical infrastructure, but there is a gigantic work ahead of us, which would require a major commitment from national administrations for what we call evidence mapping. So actually, how to make sure not that only we have a digital tools enabling exchange of data, but basically we are making sure that there is a recognition that specific pieces of data are being considered equivalent and sufficient to have a decision being taken by the administration. So this is a process that per se is not about digital, but it goes to the core of the issue. So what makes sense? How to simplify? How to make things rational and fit for purpose? And I think this is an area where we need an ongoing investment from member state administration, but it also requires a constant dialogue with business to really understand well where are the pain points, where are the hours being wasted, because ultimately only then we would be able, to get it right. And finally, Andreas actually showed, these are the building blocks. And anyway, it was not exhaustive, but a lot. I think there were 15 elements, of which probably half are managed by DG Grow. I think we are facing, at the same time, we have a very ambitious plan to go ahead, but connecting the dots, it's becoming more and more challenging opportunity. Not opportunity, challenging, basically a challenge. It's an opportunity indeed. And I must say that, we have a problem, of course, at the level of member states when whatever ministries come up with their universal solutions that might not always be in agreement. But again, we face the same risk at the Commission level. So my kind of plea, and anyway, we'll discuss this afterwards, but with this fantastic impulse that would be the action plan adopted by the Competent Council next month, with your effort to make ministers really tuning their attention to these issues, how we ensure, continuation, how we actually, and I hate to say governance, yes, but we need some sort of light governance to make sure that we would be connecting the dots. And this is, I think, something that would ultimately help businesses. And all these calculations that you have made, or this is for us, I think, a major, let's say, indeed nudge to really act upon it. And we have so many problems with the single market. Anyway, digitalization is not a miracle solution, but we can deliver quite a bit with that.
You mentioned the digital product passport, and that made me think that, in a sense, it's actually Denmark piggybacking you guys, because you came first. You came with the DPP, which in many cases is a decentralized solution. It's a business solution. How do you see that, Andreas?
I think it's very, very crucial that we get that right. I think if we look at the debate we have had around the CSRD in the last year or two, I think if we take the product passport is, of course, regulation on a product level, not even on a company level, then you can multiply almost the debate on the CSRD if we don't get it right, if we don't keep in mind how do we make this work in the businesses and among the businesses from the beginning. And I think the notion of having this digital product passport is excellent, and maybe if we can then shape the discussion in another way than we ended up doing on the CSRD, we would be at a much better place actually making an instrument work and not making it and then revising it before we have seen it in action.
Yeah.
Yes, because in a sense, you use the company's own systems to deliver what they need to show the rest of the world. And it seems to me that it's not, at least that was how it was conveyed by the Commission when it was presented. This was not a tool to show to report to government, or in some way it was to report to or to showcase information to consumers, but mostly it was about streamlining the value chain cooperation to achieve a circular economy. And in a sense it has a lot of resemblances between what you propose, Andreas, decentralized bookkeeping systems, so on, just for product data. How do you see the DPP evolve going forward? I mean, it's been created with the eco-design.
We have quite some steps ahead. First of all, again, I would be honest with you. We already see an emerging problem, which is basically the fact that we have, the DPP appeared in an eco-design, but it was not a kind of a comprehensive idea in the very beginning. It kind of emerged and was shaped through the negotiations. So let's face it, there was no proper impact assessment. And then we have a reference to digital product passport in a number of sectoral legislation, batteries, detergents, and that's not even all. And we, as those who know how the sausages are being made, in the European legislative process, we, even with the best intentions, you cannot ensure you cannot guarantee coherence. So we already have some inconsistencies. That is actually why we want to address the issue once for all at a horizontal level in terms of architecture. That would be probably part of EU Product Act coming next year. But this is more to create a future-proof, let's say, point of reference. But still, we are obviously taking all the steps to make sure that the first digital product passports can be rolled out as prescribed, which would be batteries in February 27. And that basically we would need to prepare a secondary legislation creating, the register, which would have metadata hosted by the Commission. We have few other, let's say, preparatory actions, but it would be, I would say, very intensively happening this year. what we will try to make sure with my team that we have basically the architecture right. The work on standardization is close to completion. I had a chance to see this community of very committed people from across member states, last week in Paris, where we are kind of close to completion of this 8 critical, key standards that would define DPP. But then, of course, and this is another, let's say, area where we would need a lot of engagement with the businesses, because exactly what information would go into DPP would depend on a specific product group and on the specific requirements. So this, when I'm describing all of you, you see that there are quite many building blocks which would determine whether this is really fit for purpose. And last but not least, it's a decentralized model with the role for service providers. And I think I'm very much committed also as part of this EU Product Act that we also look again at the issue of costs, so that not to basically create a scenario where we create again a huge market for, of course, providers of solutions in terms of DPP, but let's say that small players would carry disproportionate burden. So these are some of the issues which we really want to very carefully consider in the kind of phase of construction of DPP.
Because it seems like the world you're building with the DPP standards that will sort of rein in the different many companies, I'd say, many entrepreneurs that's active right now in developing the DPP systems for tomorrow. That's actually a situation, creating minimum requirements for those systems, enabling them to share data, that's kind of the world that you live.
Also, we have to be super kind of disciplined and proactive also, because we are de facto influencing what would be, the kind of a global standard. Because we are not alone, of course, in promoting this idea, even though we are probably the most advanced among other regions.
But that's the world you live in, have been living in for years, with the Bookkeeping Act, and I imagine also in other markets, similar acts. What is that world? What value does that bring, that you have minimum requirements and so on for systems for SMEs?
I think for SMEs, we can look at input and output. So on input, there's something about they expect us to facilitate and do a lot of the lifting for them in terms of gathering data, so the necessary structured data. Now we mentioned e-invoicing, PDF scanning, everything in between. I think we have quite a high degree of confidence there that we could do it in light of the Bookkeeping Act. We did hear a lot of skeptical voices before that you couldn't possibly make bookkeeping digital first. It is digital first. But there's also something on the output in terms of alleviating some of that reporting for them. There's also an expectation from the SMEs that they are not experts. And it's interesting being in a market where the less time they spend on your product, the better, which is also a unique challenge that we're dealing with something where they must be compliant. And again, with unclear standards, it's hard for us to do the full lifting for them. And I think that's maybe where you incur burdens on the SMEs. So it might be an interesting paradox there that actually by being more clear or sharper in requirements, you can actually lift a greater burden from the SMEs because you place less of the mental burden on them, ultimately.
Yes. Because that's a critique or criticism that you often hear or point raised. That's, we can't go digitally too fast because it'll hurt all the SMEs. They'll be left in the dust somewhere. But and the situation you describe is that they don't have to be digital experts.
No, exactly. And again, we are Nordic focused, and perhaps the Nordics are forerunners on some fronts in terms of digitalizations, but we don't experience skepticism there. In fact, I think with a lot of the SMEs that we speak to, at least in Denmark, there's an understanding that they must push for being innovative with their time, and they must push for being open to new solutions. That's their leg up against established competitors, usually.
And as a public entity, we've adopted the Bookkeeping Act in Denmark. We've heard some of the same criticism, but at the same time, we also have other instruments at our disposal. Andreas, what has been done in Denmark to sort of help SMEs overcome, take that first step into digitization?
I think it's not a new debate in Denmark, the fear for new digital instruments, especially from the smaller companies. I think actually a lot can be solved with quite simple tools. having vouchers, for example, for the smallest companies to actually have experts going out and helping them setting up the system, helping them navigating in the market and saying, should we choose Visma or should we choose someone else that is better suited to our business needs? So I think actually what has the most concrete solution is a small voucher for like 25,000 Danish crowns or 50,000 Danish crowns to actually get started and setting up your system right from the beginning.
Yeah, and then you mentioned in your presentation that it's not that big an investment as an SME to begin with. You mentioned, I believe, 14 million euros, and then the total business case is somewhere around 3.5 billion or 600 million euros. So essentially, it's a return on investment in week 3 or something like that.
And I also think we will probably see with the VIDA regulation coming into force, we are going digital in a lot of the transactions across Europe. I think it's a necessary step. So how do we use this to also alleviate burdens?
Yeah. And I mean, you touch upon VIDA, which is also electronic invoicing across borders. And we have one set of rules in Denmark currently. I know many other countries have other sets of rules. The whole aspect of harmonization across borders, how important is that to you in Visma, for instance?
Very important. I mean, we are focusing on small markets that live on trade. I mean, Danish companies are not going to grow that much unless you can easily trade with the neighbors. And so we run into these standard situations a lot. There's been some good steps taken from the Business Authority in terms of harmonizing Danish standards with PEPL, or the EU standard for e-invoices, for example. We'd like to see more of that, but that's also what we're hearing, so that's great. But yeah, I think that's a situation we will run into and our customers will run into, because that's a good situation to be in.
Okay. Do we have any reactions from the room? We'll be happy to take your input on board. You can think a bit more about it. I'm just thinking, I mean, you showed these 5 steps, Andreas, and it's when you look into it, it also is quite a lot of things that need to happen. I mean, it seems like a daunting task to complete. I mean, how long will it take before we can actually see the benefits from this?
I think actually we can see results very, very fast, but to get the full results, we will need to be dedicated in a couple of years or even more. But I think e-invoicing is the best case to actually get started very, very fast. I think businesses there will experience progress on the ground very, very fast. And I think it will deliver business insights and intelligence and a more orderly bookkeeping that they can actually have great value from very, very fast. And I think there, I don't know what the time horizon, it also depends on how the e-invoicing...
For us, a big priority, and also with the revision of the instrument.
But it will go very, very fast. I think the market could be ready also to have the solutions ready for all the SMEs in a very fast manner. So that would be in a manner of a few years. Yeah.
So we'll be presenting the action plan before the end of December. And then I think it's up to us, but it's also up to the Commission, private players, or other member states to operationalize this paradigm shift. How do you work, Kuba, in Grow to operationalize, sort of work with the other GGs to advance this kind of agenda across GGs?
Yeah, very good question. I must say, I mean, now of course we have, by the way, literally next week there would be a proposal for European Business Wallet, which, from let's say my DG perspective, well, it will play a very important role, helping to finally address the issue of cross-border identification of companies and identification representation, but there is also an ambitious element of that project, which is also creating a new secure channel. So this for us was also in a way a good occasion in the context of discussion, to see the interplay between this project and DPP, and even more importantly SDG and OOTS. I think that all makes everyone aware that probably we need to step up, this type of coordination, collaboration. We have, of course, a lot of different structures in the Commission, but notably we have the one corporate one, when it comes to IT systems, which are often very much also a reflection of what we do in terms of policies to that as well. But I would say there is probably more to be done inside the Commission as well as also more broadly between the member states, because what I see a lot, we basically have quite good communities, but they are grouped around a specific, in a way, project. We have IMI coordinator, Internal Market Information System coordinators. We have SDG coordinators. And then you start to scratch, and then you realize they not necessarily, are in contact with. Again, it's something different, but they are obviously, the connecting points. How the structure of this is organized, in the member states, it's not easy. Neither is it in the Commission, because it's Connect, is DG Grow. There are important systems managed by TaxSud. We have we have an extremely ambitious customs reform, which is a lot about basically big data and digitalization. We have obviously Digit, which manages a lot of infrastructure. So I think all of that, we are in a way in the same boat, I'm not coming with a definitive answer, but we clearly see, there is a need to do more in that respect.
I'd like to hear that, also from you guys, how, with this kind of agenda, which touches upon so many different elements, how do we try to get going together, so to speak? How do we cooperate on this area?
Yeah, it's really, really demanding in a way. I think we need to stay in constant dialogue pretty much. Also with the different member states, we need to have this cross-border thinking. Definitely, we need to try to coordinate our actions. And I think there is a role for the Commission maybe in moderating this and bringing the actors together. And at the national level, we need to have the constant exchange with the companies and with all players involved. I think that's the only way forward. And it's not always easy, because at the national level, you also need to bring the different ministries together and then different perspectives there. But certainly it is something that will still take a bit of time, and is a complex issue, many complex issues actually. But I think, it's just something that we need constant work on in the years to come.
Yeah, and the four of us, not you, Victor, but the four of us are policymakers. We're used to talking to each other, and probably not enough with companies. How do you see, what kind of outreach would you like to see from the sort of public side on this area? You play a key role in it.
Hopefully.
You hold the keys to much of it.
I think we've had quite productive discussions with the working groups in the Danish Business Authority around some e-invoicing legislation and compliance there. I think in general, maybe it would be best practice to try and avoid really big solutions where you have to think in all the edge cases before you attempt it. I think getting some experience, getting some of these pilot projects off the ground would probably be a good idea. And then in terms of reaching out to private industry, in Denmark, we're fortunate enough to have, in my view, quite a competent software industry that has high competition level. And so it's quite easy to facilitate direct contract and collaboration. And also, I think the interests are aligned here in the sense that the SMEs don't want to spend time on this. We want to lift the burden for them, and you guys want to save this country some resources. So it should be possible.
Yeah. So Andreas, you have the presidency for a bit more than a month and a half, and then Denmark will be forgotten in Europe. But what needs to happen? What needs to happen beyond January 1st? What kind of action, governance would you like to see from January onwards?
I don't think we have thought it all through yet. We're hoping for Jakob and his team and the rest of the Commission to help us there. But I think we need to have a firm grip that this is a competitiveness issue with a huge potential, and we need to make that crystal clear in order to have to make this a political relevant arena for the years to come. This is there are short-term gains, but it's a long-term agenda we are working on. Then I think we need to find out what is the way to keep this present for us in the coming years. So we use the tools, we use them systematically, and we bind them better together, as was earlier mentioned. And I think, of course, in my view, to get it somehow into the, for example, the roadmap for the single market would be a natural place to start to have this focus in the years to come.
Great. Do we have questions from the audience? We have one over there.
Yeah, just one question to Andreas Hauptmann. You said DPP, how we get that right. What do you mean with that? What would be right?
I think to make it right is actually some of what was earlier mentioned, to get the architecture right from the beginning, to actually use, I mean, a lot of the information that should be covered of the digital product passport is information that is there already. How do we make the value chain of the data so the data is not getting lost along the way? If we standardize this the right way, I think we will have the burdens on companies being much, much smaller than if we don't get it right. And if we don't get it right, I think it will be killed in the process, so to speak. So I don't think we have thought that through when we made the CSRD and when we saw the first standards, the ESIS standards with 1,200 data points. I think in the hindsight, we should have started small, and then when we got that to work, we could have built it bigger. Hopefully we can get that right in the digital product passports.
We have one more question in the middle.
Thank you. David Caro, ESBA, European Small Business Alliance. Talking just then about the DPP, have you looked at systems that are already in place so that you're not reinventing the wheel? For instance, the INGS system for automotive, and see if that can be carried forward for other products?
I haven't looked into the specific system you are mentioning. I think what we are proposing is not to make a specific system, but to make the architecture around the system so the market can compete on making the best solutions in the different areas.
Yeah, the IMDS system has been up and running now for quite a long time in the automotive supply, and it's a circular economy system where everybody who inputs into a car, anything into a car produced, it's like if you imagine a tree where you have the finished car at the top and then you have elements coming down. So every element is filled in by every manufacturer of that particular part, so that when the car reaches end of life, that data can be accessed so that those products can be recycled, or whatever, reused again. So again, looking at systems like that already exist, rather than reinventing the wheel, might be a good way to go.
I think actually, to jump in there, I mean, the technical specifications of the standards for the DPP is at this stage negotiated or being dealt with in the standardization committee on the DPP. It's Sense and Elecwork. I believe they are due with their standardization, sort of the result of their efforts.
By March, yeah.
By March, it's been in public hearing, I believe. So, and it's my impression that they have indeed looked into, what's available already, what are the standards in existence, and I think it also goes to your point, Andreas. There are a lot of things in play already. Is as much putting the right pieces together to find the right puzzle. So.
And just to be very clear, we don't foresee making big new systems. It's what's already there to take them and put them into play, but maybe we need to bind some of them better together than we have done today. I think that's the way we need to go forward, not complex new IT solutions at a EU level.
Great. I think we've done what we could to fill out the limited time that we have here today. Thank you very much for participating in the discussion and to bring forward your input from the various roles you have. And thank you also for you guys to turn up here and make this a worthwhile event. Yes, that's it for now. But before you all leave, I've just been asked to say that on the way out, please don't hesitate to visit the Ideas Lounge in the main foyer. We have a hosting team out there that is ready to harvest all your brilliant ideas, whether big or small, as to how we can strengthen competitiveness in Europe. And of course, don't hold back, particularly on the ideas that pertains to digitization and automation. And we need to get going, and we need your input to get going. It is, as you mentioned also, is pretty much a collaboration, kind of a partnership across all actors here. So, and all the ideas will be fed back to the Commission and or local, national decision makers. And so it's a great opportunity to voice your opinion and hopefully get heard. That's it for now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.